Welcome, everyone. This will be the first installment of our population volunteer series, Population 101, this first week being human impacts on wildlife, where we're going to get into some specific examples of how human population growth and accompanying human activities impact endangered species. And just a general housekeeping. I know we've probably all done a lot of Zoom at this point, but just want to go over the ground rules for everyone in case anyone hasn't. Please make sure you're on mute, at least for the presentation portion. That'll just prevent any feedback or any background noise so everyone can hear clearly. I will leave it up to you of whether you want to have your camera on or not. Sometimes it's nice to see everyone's faces, but understandable if not everyone wants to be on camera right now. I ask that you be respectful. Make sure you're being thoughtful when you put in the chat. But yeah, we're here to answer questions, which you can put in the chat box. So what's nice about that is if a question pops up along the way, instead of stopping, you can throw that in and we will use those to kick off the Q&A session. And just to give you an idea of the format we have planned for today, myself and Kelly will be giving about a 20-minute, 25-minute presentation covering today's topic, and then the rest of the time it's open floor of Q&A and discussion and a little talk about what next month's webinar will have in store. So with that, we'll do some intros. Hi, I'm Sarah. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Endangered Species Condoms Coordinator in the Population and Sustainability Program here at the Center. And I am talking to you today from Buffalo, New York, which is occupied Wenhilren land. And my email is there, and I will also share that in the chat at the end if you have any follow-up questions you want to reach out about or any other ideas. And Kelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name's Kelly. My pronouns are she and her. I want to acknowledge that I'm currently on the traditional territory of the Powhatan, Monacan, and Cherokee land. So I work for the center to talk about consumption and population's impact on the environment, doing that through college campuses and conferences and public events, which is kind of what you're seeing there on the screen.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And just a little bit of background on the center, just because I think that's always nice to open with, because people are familiar with our work to varying degrees. So the center is a national environmental nonprofit. We've been around for 30 years, and in that time, we've helped protect over 700 species and saved over 500 million acres of critical habitat, or to help protect it. And we do this using science, law, and creative media. And like Kelly and I both said, we work within the Population and Sustainability Program. And I always really like to share this graphic. One of our designers came up with last year. It's a representation of all the different species, like the breakdown of the species that we've helped protect. So while a lot of our really headline big campaign work is around really charismatic megafauna like grizzlies and wolves, we helped all species, plants, insects, invertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, birds. So you can see the little color coding along the bottom matches up with the type of species we've helped. So we really focus on all species across the board. And the Population and Sustainability Program is a little different than other programs at the center. We don't really have a law component. We're not doing lawsuits, but it's a lot of education and awareness for people to understand the impacts that our human population and our associated consumption have on wildlife and wild places. So with that, we will get into the population component. So on your right are a series of headlines of research that have come out recently, explicitly saying and quantifying the impact that human population has had on wildlife. So there's one, intense human pressure is widespread across terrestrial vertebrates. That study measured how much of our infrastructure and just all of our land use change has the percentage of habitats affected, and looked at thousands of species. And it's the majority of species are experiencing a really heavy pressure on their habitat. And then the recent WWF report that came out last week saying how we're decimating wildlife populations because of human actions, and another study that came out measuring the impact that humans are having on mammals. And those second two have just come out within the last month. So this is really fresh research. This is becoming like headlines in the news now. A lot of people are recognizing and really looking at the specific impacts we're having. And then on the left is a graph showing human population growth as it's correlated with wildlife extinctions in the last 200 years. And you can see that really sharp uptick starting around 70 years ago. So pretty closely connected. So with that, I want to get into some specific examples, kind of put a face to all those numbers and depressing headlines. So this is the passenger pigeon. This is a pretty classic example in conservation biology of a species there was plenty of, and humans pretty much are the exclusive reason they are gone now. So it was 1800s. There were thousands, maybe millions of these birds. There were reports of when a flock would go over, the sky would go black, midday it would look like nighttime because there's so many birds. And then within a century, humans just hunted them to extinction. I think it was, so the top right picture is Martha, the last known bird, died in a zoo. And it's just one of those, you know, how fast human impacts can take a species away if no one's doing any monitoring, if no one's watching it. And part of that goes into the biology of some of these species. Passenger pigeons needed really large groups together to breed. So once you go below a certain number, sometimes there's no coming back from that because you can have a male and female pigeon together, but if they don't have this social structure they're used to for breeding, it's not going to happen. So it's one of those, you really the science component of conservation is really important to inform the law aspect of a lot of the species protections we do. Another example, this is a species we still have around, but kind of one of those smaller, less widespread species. This is the Bethany beach firefly. So they have a really small range in coastal Delaware, and their current threats are pesticides for mosquito control, and that their habitat tends to be coastal, and which is really popular for development in that area. So it's all the shore houses along the beach down there. So that's something the center's worked on to try to slow down and stop some development happening in that area, because these are really cool species. And if you have never experienced or lived somewhere where fireflies are, where you can see them all out kind of twinkling on a summer night, it's like a pretty magical experience. It's been on planet Earth. They're small little guys, but they're really beautiful all together. So it's one of those just the range of species we're helping and working on here. This is the Hellbender. It is a large salamander. It's the largest salamander in North America. And that's why I included pictures of people holding them so you can get a size of scale. These are not like the little guys that hide under rocks. They've also been dubbed the snot otter. So I really love a good weird species that has a fun nickname like that. And these, like a lot of amphibians, are facing a lot of water pollution that's common from agricultural runoff. So the fertilizers, the pesticides, all that, when there's too much of it, runs off into the water. And these guys have really porous skin. They're really sensitive to a lot of pollutants. And it kind of all comes back to, we have more farms because we need more food to feed more people. You'll see an underlying theme here. And then kind of going back to the bigger species that a lot more people are familiar with, we've got the mountain lion here. Once again, another predator carnivore that used to be pretty widespread across the US, and a lot of them, the range and available habitat has really shrunk in the last several decades. And these big cats need a lot of territory to roam and hunt. And what's happened now is, as we've increasingly developed and built roads, they can cut through their territories. So that's what that bottom right is, a mountain lion. That car collisions are a big threat to them now. So just another one, again, as we sprawl out, as we build more infrastructure to support our growing population, there's unknown consequences. And even though a road may not seem like a large amount of habitat to take away, if it's cutting through some critical pathways, there will be effects. And look at those little baby mountain lions, they're really cute. So what I'm going to go into next, the top right of each of the following slides will have the illustrations from our endangered species condoms, which are an outreach tool we use to talk about the population growth and how it impacts wildlife. And all the species there, oh, sorry, my dog is shaking in around behind me. They all focus on species that are specifically impacted by human population growth in North America. So I thought these would be a good focal point, because if you end up giving out the condoms or volunteering at an event, it's a nice visual cue that you can talk about with human population impacts. So this is the California condor. They are an awesome example of really successful captive breeding. So a few decades ago, their population had diminished a lot. What a group of zoos did was take the remaining individuals from the wild, brought them in, and started a captive breeding program. And that was really successful, and they were able to reintroduce a bunch. So the numbers are way up from where they were. And actually, they celebrated the 1,000th chick hatching last summer. What's an important side part to note of any captive breeding and reintroduction program, though, is it's really important we maintain the habitat for the individuals to go back into. So you can collect all your individuals, breed them, but if you know where to put them back, the reintroduction won't be successful. So that's to also say habitat destruction is still a threat for California condors, and specifically, they also lead poisoning. When hunters use lead ammunition that's left in the carcasses that the condors then feed on, that's not good for them. So just a couple fun pictures here. The top left, it's a little chick being fed with a puppet. So this is what they used in captive breeding so they wouldn't imprint on humans. Then there's an actual adult with a chick. That's pretty cute. The one flying, you can see the number tag on, which is really cool if you can see them out in like California, Arizona, Utah, and Nevada, I think is their range. When you see them flying, you can see the numbers. It's like you can see it without binoculars, and it's really cool and just kind of gives you an idea of how many of these individuals have all come from this reintroduction program. And then I just have a picture of the lead ammunition, and then a picture of their range where now lead ammunition has been banned, but I do not believe that's been their entire range. So that's California condors. And then next we have the flat-tailed horned lizard. So these guys are cool. You can find, there's several different species. This one I believe is found mostly in Texas. They are mainly facing development and sprawl, and then specific activities like off-roading. So you can see how well they blend, the top left picture, you can see how well they blend into the desert, and how tiny their little babies can be, that middle picture. And because I'm trying to make this slightly less depressing with fun biology fun facts, the one in the bottom left, it's their defense mechanism. They shoot blood out of their eye, which I think is really cool. But yeah, as you can see, sprawl is, predominantly, I believe, happening out west because there's still more space to move out into. So you can kind of see that image of the community, and then just, right across the way is open desert. And the more we expand into that, the more we are taking over their habitat. And things like off-roading, it may seem like it's just wide, barren desert, but those little guys are blending in with rocks, and they're going to get squished pretty easily without anyone being able to tell. Then we've got the Monarch Butterfly, which is cool because I think that's one that's pretty widespread across the US. So that's like one we can all have a chance of seeing in our backyards or around our neighborhoods. Their fun biology fun fact is that they have a multi-generational migration. So the same monarch that starts out in like the Midwest of the US is not the same one that makes it to Mexico. There's breeding happening along the way. And most of the threats they're facing are centered around agriculture. So for one, a lot of their habitat and host plants have been replaced with, the large-scale agricultural production that we're doing with soybeans and corn. Then on top of that, there are pesticides that are not good for them that are, being used to maintain these crops. And most of these crops are actually grown not for human consumption, but for livestock consumption, which is a whole other component of agriculture that's responsible for a lot of land use change and pollution. So yeah, I just have that picture there showing the different migration patterns they have. They overwinter in Mexico, but over the years, those numbers have been dropping. They do counts down there to see how many monarchs are making it. And you can see kind of in the middle of the US, like Nebraska and South Dakota is the Corn Belt. So that can be a major area that they typically migrate through that is, has drastically reduced the amount of host plants and food they have available. Then we've got the sea otter. This is specifically the southern sea otter that you'll find off the coast of Southern California. Their numbers were really close to being extinct due to fur hunting. but they made a great comeback. But now they continue to face threats from offshore drilling and commercial fishing. So offshore drilling, it's obviously like the habitat disruption, potential for oil spills that are obviously not good for a variety of wildlife. And then with commercial fishing, there's always just the chance of them being bycatch with that. And sea otters are really important. I mean, they're not just like super cute, which they totally are, but they are a really important keystone species in the ocean ecosystem. So they will eat sea urchins, and without them, and this is what I believe started to see when numbers were low from fur hunting, is then the sea urchins will decimate the kelp forests, and that will throw the ocean ecosystem out of whack entirely. So if you have the sea otters, keeping the sea urchins in check, the kelp forest can be maintained. So it kind of shows like, once you lose one species, there can be a cascade of effects. Then we've got the whooping crane, another successful captive breeding reintroduction program with also some human-assisted migration, which I think is pretty cool. They fly a little plane and teach them the migration routes they need to fly. Similar theme of they are also facing habitat loss. A lot of this wetland habitat gets developed a lot. Industrialization of these areas, and then power lines is a risk, as they're taking off. So you see that one picture in the bottom right. They're getting ready to take off. There's lots of power lines in the way. So it's one of those, even if it's not immediate habitat, certain things, infrastructure we need to build to support where we continue to develop land also has its own impacts, even if like a telephone pole does not look like it takes up that much space.
What could you be doing, right? Besides this idea of focusing locally on, urban and suburban sprawl. As you know, we are all about family planning, education of women and girls, comprehensive sex ed as the solution, some of the solutions to population. And so there happens to be World Contraception Day is being commemorated this Saturday. And there is a tweet storm. I don't know how many of you are tweeting, but anyway, if you want to tweet on Saturday from 11 to noon Eastern, and you see some hashtags here on the screen, they're just really asking folks to talk about why birth control and family planning is so important. And there's one group in particular, which is highlighted here in the slide, is called Free the Pill. And this is an organization working to make birth control over the counter so that you wouldn't need to get a prescription or go to the doctor's office. And this has gotten a lot of attention now, of course, during COVID, so that people don't need to make these unneeded visits to the doctor's office. But really, as we commemorate this day, we just want to keep in mind that we are in the midst of this global pandemic that has disproportionately affected people of color and Indigenous people. And we are, a nation that is rife with injustice, and we really want broad contraceptive access to be achieved, and we need racial justice to have that happen. So I will put in the chat a link to a Dropbox that if you're interested in participating in the tweet storm, there's some graphics and more information about the hashtag and other sample posts that you could do. So that was all I had. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Kelly. That's great. So going off that, we have a few more actions to suggest that you can hit the ground running on with right now. The Center for Biological Diversity has an action alerts page where there's so many issues you can sign petitions for, write to your representatives on, and there's it's those nice automated forms that do it for you. I thought about picking it. I thought there'd be a couple I could suggest, and then I looked, there's so many that apply to everything we talked about today. Ending pesticide use, stopping mining on public lands, various specific species protections. So I've included that link there. Kelly's going to put that in the chat. I highly suggest you check it out now and sign whichever ones appeal to you. And then I just want to promote for next month's webinar, the plan is to discuss how to write an op-ed or a letter to the editor. So our new media specialist will be hosting that one, and she'll be going over how to find opportunities to write, what outlets to look at, and just how to have success with that. So what I encourage you to do from this is we covered all these different species, big and small, super small range, super widespread range. Look for any local issues, excuse me, local issues or species that are happening in your local area, because I think local is a great way to start with this, that you feel that you could write about for an op-ed or an LTE. So maybe there's a development project that you think is gonna destroy like precious green space near your home, or you know about a particular species in your area that's under threat from something. Look for those stories over the next month. Start thinking about how you could apply to that, or what's your local paper you could submit to. And the plan is to kind of do a presentation similar to this, where we give you an overview, and then the rest of the time we can spend workshopping and kind of helping people build out their ideas a little more, and we can help support you, potentially help with edits to get some responses out there. So with that, I'm gonna keep screen sharing. Oh, no, I don't have to screen share. Screen sharing, and I'm going to stop recording.